at least we know we can all get in.
Yes.
Christy will be here after a bit. One guy from Old Dominion University connected with me on LinkedIn about half an hour ago. He presented in an earlier session.
Okay.
So it's like, there you are, you back.
Yeah, somehow my Wi-Fi was being iffy and it just dropped me. And I was like, oh, okay, good.
Yeah. So what are you gonna do?
Right. I was like, so prepare if God forbid I'm like in a statement and I just drop flat. Y'all just gotta pick it up.
I said Josh is still.
Oh man.
Stephen, I don't see you yet, but I thank you for joining us. That means there will be at least one person that's not us.
I'm sure more people will join as we go, but yep, at the very least, you'll have an audience of one.
Yeah, see, that's all we needed, really.
That was the bar.
So one thing, because we're recording everything, we will be posting it to our conference YouTube channel. So you'll be able to reach more audience on the back end, I think.
That's great.
But also we've got another 10 minutes. People have been coming in like a few minutes late even, so.
So that's par for the course. So what are you affiliated with, Stephen?
So I'm an assistant professor at the Rockefeller College of Public Affairs.
Got it.
Albany, University of Albany.
And you're on the conference committee then?
Yes, yeah. So all of the hate mail, I guess, can come to me.
Well, let us know if you need moral support, okay?
I appreciate it.
Later. You got our email addresses. Hi, Christy.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good. Hey, so Christy, what we're going to do, if you get a quiet background, the whole panel is just going to stay unmuted
Okay.
once we get going, just so you know, so that we've got one less thing that can generate friction because everybody's got enough of that in their life already.
All right.
And
Hey Steve, are we recording? Will the recordings of all the sessions be available after the conference? Okay,
yep.
great.
So they're all going into our cloud right now. And then on the back end, we're going to download all of them probably next week, and then just spend a couple of days uploading them into a YouTube channel. And then we'll link to it on the website.
Perfect.
But I'll make sure I email updates as we finish.
well, thank you. Actually, I was just wondering before you got on, Thomas Poulin connected with me on LinkedIn, and then I went and looked to see which paper he had presented, and I'm going, ooh, I really want to read that paper or see the slides. So this will work great, even if he doesn't get around to sending me the paper.
Exactly.
So cool. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So are you in the office right now doing this?
Nope, I'm in my home office. My wife is managing the dog downstairs, and I'm in the home office upstairs.
Yep, my daughter has the dog in another room, hopefully for the whole time.
Yeah, but thankfully the dog has, as long as she has one parent nearby, she's fine.
Yeah.
But
yeah, this would not have been this smooth if it were a year ago.
oh, I know.
So
I know.
everyone's sort of trained at this point, right?
Yeah. Exactly right. Yeah, to the extent that we've had problems, it's mostly been related to the university has pretty strict security settings, mostly to prevent when we made the move online for classes last year. We had this problem with people Zoom bombing. They would just like join and say something offensive or whatever.
Yep.
And so to prevent that, they locked down our security settings. But for things like this, where we're intentionally trying to come together, it can sometimes be a little hard. But
yeah, I had a real problem with that. I host events on Zoom, 8 or 9 a year, and I started doing that before the pandemic. So I had my settings set up so that it always worked, and there was low barrier to entry. And then when the Zoom bombing happened, they started changing all their settings, tightening them up. So I felt like I had to readjust about 3 times last year. And so I can't imagine when you've got an enterprise license and you're trying to do that for an entire school. I just can't imagine how complicated that is.
That's exactly right. And so I think they just did blanket things like, we're going to make it really strict. And then, I'm sympathetic. I get it. So if you see me turn my camera off, it might be that I'm getting on the phone to deal with the fire. I don't think we've seemed to have the kinks worked out now, but.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I promise not to be offended. So now, if you drop off completely, no, we know you got stuff to do, but that's great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Do most people seem to be showing up on camera, or how's that been going?
Well, usually it's the panelists on camera, and then a bunch of black boxes around them in the Brady Bunch formation. So
well, we'll see how this works, because we're going to be in gallery view, and we're hopefully some people will show up. If they don't, we'll talk to the black boxes.
And that's one of the reasons I asked if it was going to be recorded. Yeah, because we can use it. I mean, I could use it in classes and otherwise. So even if we just talk to Steve, we can use it later.
That's right. That's right. No, that's absolutely right. It's more engaging when people show up this way. But I've talked to my share of phone numbers in black boxes too. So I can do it. In fact, you know what? A couple of years ago, I called the phone number, wound up talking to the assistant professor it belonged to, and wound up meeting him at the cafe at the university here.
Oh, that's great.
Because I just wanted to know, why he was showing up as a phone number. And then he told me why, and we talked about it, and then we had a great lunch together. It was the first time I'd actually tried to it felt like reverse dialing, But he was a very nice guy, and he's still over there, and now we know each other. So
that's great. Yeah, I taught statistics to a lot of black boxes.
Okay, we got Kitty. Okay.
That's kind of hard.
Say, Kitty, you froze for a minute.
Yeah, we all are once in a while.
Yeah. But yes, it has been a little bit hard, especially since you don't know if they're actually getting it, listening, where people are at. Okay,
so you guys, if that happens to one of us during the session, that means, Stephen, if the video freezes, the sound also freezes, right, for that person?
Yeah.
So what that means is somebody else is going to have to talk if it lasts very long.
Yeah.
So just FYI, has that happened a lot, Stephen, or?
Here and there, but not much.
Okay, good. Okay.
It's hard for me to get a sense because I've been in only one track, trying to manage one track. So I don't know how the other panels have been doing.
Oh, so you've been managing this track? Cool. Yeah, we didn't know where they'd put us. It's sort of an oddball, but we were pleased that the proposal was accepted, and it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm interested. I was looking forward to it.
This is the third ASPA panel I've done. In fact, we met Christy at the last one.
Oh, excellent.
We were thrilled that Christy came. That was also a very tiny group.
Does everybody have co-host permissions now? Did I get everybody? Josh, did I get you?
Yeah, I think Kitty's the only one that's really going to need them though.
Okay.
Yeah, I just need to be able to share some things, and I haven't seen that I do, but I'll let you know in a minute if it doesn't work. Hi, Missy and Caitlin. If you guys want to come on by video, you don't have to, but this is a conversation when we're welcome to have you in the room. we don't really do Sage on the stage too much. There you go. Hi. So this reminds me a little bit of Harry Potter and the people moving in and out of the picture frames. That's kind of what I like about it.
So what I'm going to do, so we're at time. So what I'm going to
Okay.
do is I'm just going to turn things over to you, Kitty, and let you run the show.
Okay.
The chair ended up having a conflict that they had to.
Yeah, we
bow out.
talked to her. We talked to her by Slack. We're good.
All right, excellent.
So
I'm
thank
just
you
going to
very
turn
much.
things over to you and let you run the show. I'll enjoy it.
Okay. Okay. Well, hello, everybody. And we're thrilled to see you today and appreciate your making the effort to get here. So my name is Kitty Woolley. The first thing I'm going to do is introduce the panelists, and then I'm going to spend a few minutes telling you about what crazy thing we've done and what the background and the context is for it. And then we'll have I'll ask the panelists a few questions, and then we'll, if you have a burning question at any time, just raise your hand. You don't need to mess with the technology. You can just do this if you want to, because there's so few of us. And we'll fold those questions in, and then we'll show you a couple of videos, short ones, and we'll carry on. So the other people on the team are Connie Berhane, Christy Bartman, and Josh Avila. And Connie is sitting in Northern Virginia, and Christy's in Columbus, Ohio, and Josh is in Providence, Rhode Island. And I will share a slide just so you can see who they are and kind of what they do and their credentials. And that's the cover of the ebook. And now I'm going to stop the share. That is one of only two slides that we'll show today. The one at the end will be people's contact information so that you don't have to wait until stuff's posted to YouTube if you want to reach out to them. In a few minutes, we'll find out what each of the panelists did, what their role was in the production of this multimedia ebook. So, not seeing any hands yet, I will go on to the sort of what we did and why. In order to understand this, you need to know that there's a network that's been interacting since 2003. It's called Senior Fellows and Friends, and it's something I started with a dinner in Washington, D.C. The dinner was an attempt to get some other senior fellows who had gone through this big leadership development program run by the Council for Excellence into the same room again after the program was over. And the inspiration for it, just the dinner, was a guy named Jim Trinka, who's a senior executive, very able former jet pilot who, when he retired from flying jets, did a PhD in political science with, of all things, a sort of a concentration in HR. And he did a lot of stuff with Zenger Folkman, the guys who work on strengths, one of the other strains of the strengths-based movement. And Jim did a lot of work with IRS middle managers for several years before he moved on. Currently, he's at VA, and I think that's probably where he'll retire. And so I thought, I'd asked him if he wanted to go to dinner, and he said, sure, and he handed me a card. And then I thought later, okay, this is I need to see if some other people want to hear this too, because this guy is doing cool stuff. So I emailed everybody I knew from that program, and I think another 12 of them showed up, and we had just an amazing dinner with this guy. So we ate and drank. He presented a while. We did Q&A. And that has turned into a thing a few weeks later when somebody asked me when we were going to do that again. And we're now in year 18, have done 91 sessions. They've been virtual since about 2018, except for one dinner, and that's because I needed to retire early and move back to Colorado Springs to take care of my mother. After the pandemic, if we get to a new normal that lets us do dinners again, it will probably be a hybrid thing where we've got people in the room having dinner and the people that have been participating in virtual sessions during the pandemic. And of course, if any of you want to join us, you can let me know. The focus has been, these things have been multi-sector since the second dinner, which is to say about 85% of the people who show up work in government. The rest of them either work around government as contractors or academics in public administration or nonprofit leaders who are focused on improving government. So there are really two strains. It's improving government and working on personal leadership capacity to be more able to do that with other people. The special projects are a sort of a complementary spin-off, I guess. There's a core of people who are more invested in these things, who want to experiment together using their own time. And so I sort of dangled the hook about 2017, and a few of us, including a retired OMB executive and several people you wouldn't expect to be there, sort of high and low in terms of hierarchy and all over the map. And 8 of us showed up in a room in Reston, Virginia, actually a friend of mine's living room. And we talked about what we could do together. And subsequently, 4 of us wrote an ebook, and it's up on our website. And it's that was our first ebook on boundary spanning. And we just finished the 3rd one, and it has just gone up on the web. The point of those ebook projects, the idea that animates all 3 of them is really just the single word across. And that's because I have a very strong conviction based on 45 years of work experience, and apparently the co-creators of the ebooks do too, that you don't get the best results in a silo. You've got to have cross-fertilization. And not only that, and you need cross-fertilizing knowledge transfer, not only that, you need to be able to do things at work that cross silos. And you need to not to have permission to sneeze. Sort of, you need to have some room. Now, at the same time, you've got to stay aligned with the mission. So we're not talking about like all these cowboys who want to span boundaries, who are all riding off in separate directions, because that just won't work. But you also have people who sort of won't accept, no, there's some way to work around the supervisor, the truly bad one, who says, don't talk to those people over there, because that jeopardizes everyone's future. So what we've really been working on is, in the first ebook, there was a lot of theory in it, including by Adrian Wolfberg, one of my friends who drove down from Army War College, where he was teaching, specifically to be in that little meeting for 2 hours. And then he drove back up to Army War College the same day. He wrote a theoretical chapter in the first ebook based on his thing called a knowledge lab that he implemented across Defense Intelligence Agency, and it actually ran for 5 years until his sponsoring admiral retired, and then they cut the budget for it. So the across piece is not a given. It's hard still. But Zeke continues to write, and he's now doing that from Defense National Intelligence University. What I'm focused on at this point, and it's why I dangled the hook, and these 3 people, among a few others, showed up, much to my just joy, is that the boundary spanning is really not a thing that's done by executives. It is that, but it also ought to be done by 20-somethings who are in their first or second year at work in government. It has to be done at all levels. And in the ebook, we say more about why we think that is. I don't want to go too much farther with that right this minute, but does anyone have any questions before I start pestering the panelists with questions? And you can hit your space bar and just hold it down if you want to ask a question without trying to figure out how to unmute yourself. And you're also welcome to leave yourself unmuted if your background is quiet. Okay, I'm going to go on then. And the first thing I thought we'd do is to ask each person, each panelist, and maybe we'll start with Josh, what were the project activities you participated in this year?
Thanks, Katie. So this was a project of love that started over the summer, and I had different components of it. So I actually wrote a whole chapter about boundary spanning examples within my professional and my personal life, which was interesting. I've never written a chapter for anything besides like an essay. So that was a nice little journey into the unknown for me. And then I also was able to recall a lot of experiences that I even wrote about, but also was able to write them into a script to try to do like the role play scenario. And it was just a lot of working with these great people to really assess how we all individually boundary span, to also get the lessons learned from those activities to help other people grow. So chapter, role plays, and meetings with these folks every couple of weeks.
And so what you'll find out when and we'll show you the URL to the webpage at the end, is we did an ebook, but we also did some video role plays. So as Josh just said, people wrote scripts, they practiced, and you'll see 2 short videos of role plays that emerged from that. The point of that is to show people what could be done. And one of our prior ebooks does that with just clunky, cartoony business scenarios. And then this time around, we actually used video, and I think it was highly successful. We'll see what you think later. Connie, what was your participation this year?
So for me, of course, the project was exciting for me. It was the first time I've ever done something like this before. And kind of what I participated in an interview where I shared some of the reasons why I began boundary spanning, which was pretty much because I felt kind of stovepiped in my current job position. I also had the opportunity to do some role playing in an informational interview of an organization that I was interested in learning more about. So those were the two areas that I participated in for this specific project.
And okay, I think there's another question I want to ask you, but we'll move on to Christy for now, and I'll just restrain myself. So Christy, what did you participate in? What was your role this year?
I was involved in the role plays. And so I was able to come on. I was kind of the role play wrangler initially, and was able to come on and meet Josh and Connie and work with them with the scripts that they provided. And so you'll see my face in there a couple of times too. Josh and I had an absolute blast on the ones that we did. So you'll see those. And in fact, as kind of, a furtherance of this boundary spanning activity, I teach, and I'm in academia after having been in some of the public service areas. And so Josh was the perfect person to bring into my online class to do a recording of what he's been doing, not only the boundary spanning that we share, but also what he's been doing from an MPA student into working in the public sector. And so, I mean, that's an example of how these things just kind of blossom.
And didn't you tell us that you actually showed a group of students the clunky animated business scenarios from last time, and they just cracked up, but then they actually had a real conversation about it?
Yeah, and if we get a chance, I'll kind of go through some of the academic aspects of what I really, really like about this in an academic setting.
Great. Okay. So thank you all. So what we're going to do now is we're going to view 2 short videos. Total runtime is about 6 minutes, and then we'll carry on. And I have practiced this, so hopefully this is going to be just really smooth. So these are 2 scenarios. One is, I think of as primarily mission focused. The second one is primarily career development focused. Although if you think about it, career development is also part of the mission.
Hi, Christy. I wanted to reach out and first and foremost, personally thank you so much for the great civics workshop that you just hosted for the Rhode Island Black Business Association's Policy and Advocacy Committee last week. It was phenomenal, and truly, it was a great introduction to the general principles and ideas that our committee is going to be working with and contending with as our efforts really start to come to fruition over time. And as a newly formed committee, your input was just so valuable. But on a side note, and correct me if I'm wrong, but during your presentation, did you mention that you worked for Fidelity Investments at some point for, I think you said a few years? And I only asked this because I'm currently serving as the interim executive director for the Providence Human Relations Commission. And yes, I have to slow myself down when I say that because it doesn't fit on a business card, it's just too long. But long story short, in that role, I'm trying to establish an anti-racism coalition between the city itself and various other community partners who we can identify that may have similar missions and goals, and thought that Fidelity could actually be a potential partner in that endeavor. And so with that in mind, do you think you have any relevant connections who would be interested in helping us with that?
Definitely, Josh. You know what, the pleasure of that committee workshop was all mine. I'm glad you found it useful. But basically, in regard to Fidelity, yes. I worked there for close to a decade, and I'm still friendly with the folks over there. I was stationed in their community development investment section, so that's just perfect. I can connect you with their regional VP of community development, who I think would be really interested in hearing what you have to say. Could you send me some more information on the initiative? I'd be happy to forward it along with an introduction email to get the 2 of you going.
Yeah, I mean, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much, Christy. I can definitely send you a quick blurb about that later on, either today or tomorrow. And I just really look forward to connecting with your colleagues soon, because I really think that we can do some great work together. It's just trying to make those connections happen. And I thank you so much for helping me in that. And I really want to just say again, thank you for everything that you do, not only for what you've done for our workshop, but for all the great work that you do, informing others about how to really get involved in our process and be advocates for ourselves, our community. And truly, again, thank you. And I will definitely send out that blurb so that hopefully we can see that email come out in the next couple of days.
Perfect. Once I get that blurb, I'll make that connection and you'll be good to go. So thank you. You take care.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Christy. Take care. Have a great one.
Okay. So that's the first one. And before we go to the second one, I'm going to ask Josh if you can briefly say anything you want to say about that role play.
Yes. It's odd seeing myself on camera, so I'll throw that out there. So I'm like watching myself and I'm like, this was a endeavor in which I was truly acting as interim ED for that commission. And I think the co-panelists will understand, will probably get tired of me saying this over and over again, but I'm very sick of hearing, thoughts and prayers when, or we keep saying the time to act or the time to do something is now, right? Like things have to change, but yet no one is ready to pick up the mantle and lead the charge. So being able to make the connections, even if they're far out, but just being able to see where these possible connections lie to do the better good kind of mentality, and as I think where we all need to be as public servants to really tackle the largest problems that we find today. And so working with Christy on this, it was really helpful to see how this structure of even like reaching out to someone and just briefly mentioning something that came up in conversation can lead to something of positive impact down the road.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to share the screen and we're going to go to the second video. And this one should have been Connie and Christy or Connie and Josh, but Connie had a family situation that made that impossible. So, but Connie is going to comment after this video runs.
Hey, Josh, how are you doing? I appreciate you reaching out to me on LinkedIn. Glad you noticed my position at the Office of Management and Budget. What can I tell you about OMB?
So one, thank you so much, Christy, for even just taking the time to meet with me. So currently I'm a federal civil servant and I have around 7 years of experience with the federal government. And in particular, most of my time has been with the Department of the Army. That's currently where I am now. And in my current role with the Department of the Army, I analyze organizational structures. But as of late, I'm really starting to explore other agencies and really just wanted to learn more about OMB. And so when I saw that title on your LinkedIn page, I just knew I had to reach out to you.
That's great, Josh. OMB really thinks, looks highly at the experience that civil service bring to the table. So coming in from another agency is something that we definitely take a look at.
I mean, that's great to hear, at least on my end. And I really appreciate, again, you just taking the time, but to also hear your insights from your personal experiences that you've had with OMB since your time there.
Oh, no problem, Josh. I'm happy to talk to you about it. And I'm sure that, you've read the website and you know that we basically oversee the implementation of the president's vision across the whole branch. We carry out this mission through about 5 functions across the executive departments and agencies, mainly in the areas of budget, regulatory, legislative review, contracts, and grants. But one of the things I'm really excited about right now is something called foresight. And OMB has really kind of brought an individual on that we are looking out into the future now, not just a 5-year strategic plan, but decades out. And it's just really a neat new initiative that we're doing. And I'm excited about where it might, the potential that it has to move us forward in a big way.
I mean, that sounds amazing considering that if we consider how many issues we currently are facing that could have been negated had we had that kind of foresight. So, I mean, that just sounds exciting. And I mean, even just even collaborating in that team, focusing on such powerful presidential initiatives just sounds like an amazing opportunity. I would definitely be interested, in particular with the area regarding regulation. But overall, that just, wow. Wow.
Excellent. Hey, have you seen the OMB detail opportunity for a program examiner?
That doesn't ring a bell, so I'm assuming it hasn't come across my radar as of yet. But I always welcome a good challenge, so I'd love to learn more about it. But can you just clarify what exactly a program examiner does?
Sure. They work in the research management office. They do all sorts of things, like from legislative analysis to advising senior policy officials on plans and programs. You know, I'd encourage you to take a look at the opportunity, if for no other reason than just to see, you know, what is available and get some exposure to OMB. But otherwise, you know, it might be something for you to take a serious look at.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to like check it out and see what it's about. If I do end up applying, which to be honest, it sounds like I may already. Do you have any advice on like resume preparation or just general like tips and tricks on applying for it and what might be useful to highlight?
Yeah, really, Josh, key to this is your agency experience. Make sure you're highlighting that. You should also highlight any experience you have in policy, budget, and analytics. Data analytics is huge right now, and if you've got any kind of experience there, that's important to take a look at.
Fantastic. I will definitely be sure to highlight all of those things when I check it out. And if I check it out and like it, then definitely will do. Christy, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time, just the overall advice. And I'm definitely going to check it out. And I will let you know what my thoughts are after further reading it. And then I'll go from there. Thank you so much.
Outstanding, Josh. Have a good day.
Thanks you.
Okay, so that's the second one. And now, Connie, this was based on something you actually did. And I know you helped develop the script initially. Do you have any comments? Like how do you think that went? Does that relate at all to what you actually did?
So yes, it definitely relates to what I actually did. As I stated earlier, one of the reasons I started the Boundary Span is because I felt stovepiped in my organization. And what has, you know, often happened is it's been difficult to gain support within the organization for things like career broadening assignments. And some of those barriers for me have been, you know, the mission wouldn't allow for me to do certain things, or lack of funding, or it's been no reason at all. So this is when, of course, I reached out to OMB, and one of the things I thought about was, you know, my own career aspirations, and kind of thought about the areas that I was passionate in. So I wanted to put my own game plan together in terms of boundary spanning, and so that's why I reached out to, you know, OMB. To get some feedback on that organization, and also some of the lessons that I learned from that is, you know, the process. Nothing happens immediately, of course. So again, it was important for me to reach out, to make that connection, introduce myself to someone there at OMB, find out more about what they do. That helped me a whole lot. I found a lot of success in doing that. I found success. I actually found the individual from LinkedIn. So, you know, reaching out on LinkedIn or email were thought unlikely ways to reach out to people, but actually turned out to be very successful.
And as I recall, this was, because we've been talking for a couple of years, this was not just a whim you had. You put 8 or 9 years of solid senior analyst work in a one unit at Army, but you just couldn't sort of find a way to keep growing, correct?
Absolutely. I could not find a way to keep growing in that. So, you know, again, what made me feel I had permission to do the crossing boundary was my determination to control my own career path. And so to do that, that required reaching out to different people, It required reaching out to different organizations, learning about what they do, connecting with people. And so again, what I did was I decided to put me a little list together for the people that I met, take notes on those organizations that I was interested in. And so that is kind of the path that I took.
And tell everybody what happened, where you ended up last month.
All right. So I guess it happened in July, August timeframe. Of course, with me reaching out to various people, looking to see what getting information on different organizations. And in this instance, another military organization, which was Air Force, finding out a little bit more about them. And, my neighbor worked for the Air Force for there again, boundary spanning. My neighbor's right across the street, found out all about the Air Force. She gave me some links to connect with Air Force, and I did that. And I started receiving job announcements through those links and ended up getting an interview. And I actually have gotten hired for a position with the Air Force as a management analyst as of, I believe it was August. So it does work.
And you're at the Pentagon now, so you moved from Fort Belvoir to the Pentagon, except that you're still mostly working from home?
Yes, I'm working from home, but the position is based at the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm. Way to go, Connie.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're gonna go on with some more questions to panelists, unless the people in the room have questions. Anybody in the room have a question before we go on? Of course, there will be more time at the end. Okay.
I had a quick question.
Oh, good.
Connie, when you made the decision to kind of branch out on your own and look for yourself to see what other career opportunities were available, about how long did the process take for you before you were actually able to change your position?
So in this instance, it depends. I first had to put a plan together, as I stated, because what I was doing in the beginning was I didn't have a plan. I wasn't really reaching out. What I was doing was applying for jobs, and that was, kind of didn't help me at all. So in terms of boundary spanning, yes, I think I started doing that I've been doing it for a while, but in this instance, I want to say for about 4 or 5 months. I've been reaching out to the different organizations and finding out, what they do. So it took me about, I want to say it took me about 4 months for Air Force.
I thought, so thank you.
Okay. And thanks, Missy. Anybody else before we move forward? Okay, Connie already answered the next question I was going to ask, which is sort of what made you feel you had permission. And I love the answer. Josh, I know, I have the sense that you've been boundary spanning, working across boundaries much longer than I've known you, but do you know the answer to this question? What made you feel like you had permission to span boundaries, or have you just always been doing it?
That's an interesting question, Kitty, because I think as I wrote in my chapter, like the first sentence I wrote, I was like, let me be transparent. When Kitty talked to me about boundary spanning, I literally had zero idea what that was. And then after speaking about what boundary spanning is, I kind of realized I have just naturally done so for essentially my adult life from 18 on. I just kind of had this notion to connect with folks, to really not only find out who they are and what they do, but why they do it. I think that's my biggest strong point, because it talks about who they are in terms of their ethos and their moral compass kind of mentality. But recently, I would say I've been working with a local government for the past 2 years or so, and that was coming out of retail. So I was really trying to find myself in a career. And I went from intern to part-time contract to full-time within the mayor's executive office within like 6 months. So a part of that was also boundary spanning as well, just trying to figure out who to meet with, who to talk to, why they do what they do again, how it all kind of correlates into what the mission, vision, and value is for the city itself. And then over time, I was able to become interim ED, like I said, for that commission while my colleague was on leave. And that was around the same time as the murder of George Floyd. And so this was, when I took over, it was around September, and the commission had created a anti-racism committee, but it was so new and it was in reverberation from the events a couple of months ago that they were still trying to get their feet wet. So they were trying to figure out what's our next step, how do we make an impact for the city and for the state at large to be anti-racist, to be actively anti-racist, I should say. And so as interim ED, again, I had this notion of, we always say we have to do these things and it's important, but yet no one ever does. So I felt empowered to reach across silos, because what the commission wanted, which is a group of 13 people who are tasked with essentially running this whole initiative, was that they were looking for around 7 to 10 community partners from different industries, from different facets of government, nonprofit, et cetera, to come together to say, we know that these problems exist both on a local and a state level, and we need to come together, even though we may not be from the same industry, even though we may not have similar job titles or same organizational structures. We care about the mission, vision, and values of anti-racism and how to promote those to make the world, at least on our micro level, like a better place for all. And so I felt empowered to reach out to connections who I didn't really even know well, but I knew would be interested in the fight kind of mentality. And so when I was reaching out to folks, I had this notion of, listen, we can drag this out and have 4 months of meetings to develop an MOU or a contract to say, we're going to do X, Y, Z together. But rather than that, I said, we had a half-hour meeting with, I think it was 8 community partners total, just saying, here's who we are, here's what we do, here's what we want to accomplish, here's how we think we can come together to do so. Are you in? And within 3 months of me being interim, we were able to establish the coalition of 8 to 10 community partners, nonprofits, partners from the community. We had people from the finance industry, the life savings industry. And so it was kind of a melting pot of just folks who believe that anti-racism is the only way forward to address the systemic injustices that we have. But it didn't take the minutia of having 3 to 6 month time lengths to meet, have MOUs. It was really just, here's the problem. We can be change agents, but we have to do it now. And how do we go about it? And so it was more of the call to action for like the society.
Right. So, and that's one of the things that has kept this work that we've been doing vibrant over the last 4 or 5 years is the fact that not everything takes a big, heavy set of written documents and commitments to start. And that's one of your points that I heard. So anytime I see, oh, well, you have to do this. Well, maybe you do. It probably depends on the scale of what you're trying to do and the longevity of the project, but you may not too. And so I really appreciate your bringing that forward. And we're going to go to Christy in a minute. One of the things I realized early in the year was that really most people I knew were not really staying in their silos. So we're sort of now looking at practice, at not coaching sessions for the children that don't know as much as we do, but mastermind sessions next year, sort of brief bursts of mastermind where everybody who comes and plays with us in a meeting like this has some experience at boundary spanning, even if they weren't calling it that. And we're not just talking about career networking here, as you can tell from Josh's thing. The networking is really secondary. It's an outcome of doing boundary spanning that pushes the mission forward in a better way because you're crossing silos. Now, with that, I have to go to Christy. And Christy, the same question I gave Josh. I kind of think you've been doing this since you were a little kid, but I could be wrong because I didn't know you then. So what or who gave you permission to span boundaries?
Pretty much from the word go. You're right, Kitty. I've been one to ask forgiveness instead of permission for the majority of my life here. And I think part of that is just this intrinsic curiosity. I am just curious about how things work together, and different ways to do things. So like what starting this Eyes Up Appalachia, my anti-human trafficking initiative, part of what I did initially was go to different coalition meetings. They weren't anti-trafficking, but they were from different subjects, but they were made up of the same people that handled human trafficking and otherwise. And I listened to what they were saying about what they were doing in their area. And then in my mind, I made that connection with how we could work together. And so I'm working with a lot of different agencies that may not initially have anything to do with human trafficking. Same with some of the students that I work with. Right now, I'm working with a student organization on design thinking, and they're working with me on concepts on human trafficking, but they bring a whole new look at it. And that's, to me, it gets exciting to me when I can go, say, reach from the public sector. I can reach into the business sector. I can reach into the nonprofit sector. I can reach into the IT sector and bring in, systems analysis and everything else that really gives me a broader view of how to address the area that I'm working with, and a bigger team and a bigger group of stakeholders to work with. And so that, to me, is what's exciting about it. And that's kind of always been exciting to me. So
I resonated with the curiosity. I've always been curious about everything. So when I changed from, I was a college financial aid director the first half of my career. And when I moved to the other side of the desk and became an institutional review specialist for federal student aid in Washington, going to colleges and universities and reviewing how they were managing their student aid funds, I was curious about everything. And then when I went to Washington to work on a project and wound up staying, I was always talking to everybody about everything. It never dawned on me that, you might not be supposed to do that. And so I love what you said. And I would think in a project that important in the wild, you have to be able to talk to anybody that you think will help move it forward, right? What about
part of that, Kitty, is understanding what other people do too, because one of the terms that somebody used for me is a weaver. And so if I understand what other organizations are doing, I can put other people together. So that's part of it too.
And if anybody's interested in that aspect, probably the most well-known weaver is June Holley, Holley. She's been doing that since she was a little kid and has a big web presence if you're interested in knowing more about that. Who's got a question about what Christy said? Okay, we're going to go on. And okay, so Christy, before we go further, what's a main takeaway you would like for the people here to have from this session?
The two things that are just the most basic are be curious and like people. Those are the two things that I mean, if you just enjoy talking to people and you're just naturally curious, then that's that'll get you there. Whether you have a detailed plan, a real, something you want to achieve like Connie did, or whether you just, you're just in a new setting and you're just trying to learn things. Those are the two takeaways that I would say.
And so is that something that you share with the college students you're working with at Ohio State?
I do. We've expanded, I teach public management and strategic management and leadership. And so this really dovetails in nicely with some of the, talk about stakeholder analysis and SWOT analysis and strategic planning. This kind of broadens that out. And it was interesting talking to Kitty, because when she was saying, well, a lot of the folks in the federal government, they don't want to get out of those silos. They have a hard time doing that. And to me, it was so easy. I wasn't really sure, it's like, seriously, Kitty? And then, so I started talking to my students and asking them, and Kitty had developed this little PowerPoint slide. And what it is on the one side, there's this little amorphous thing that's their comfort zone. It's a comfort zone. And then she had like 5 or 6 different acts that were it depends on who you are, we're varying stages from that comfort zone. So like one of them was to ask a near peer in a completely different part of an agency to meet for coffee or lunch to learn more about it. One was to go to resources like the GAO manual and things like that. One was to reach out to someone in another sector or another layer of government. One was to connect with someone they perceived to be more senior to ask about being a mentor or something like that. Another one was to apply for a project that was not really in your area, but to work on a separate cross-cutting project. And then the 2 more, one to make a crazy reach, just pie in the sky reach. And the final one was to get interview with somebody that you might consider to be a mentor or somebody you wanted to shadow. And so and what we did was we put this on a PowerPoint slide. And so I asked the students to move those little things around closer to the comfort zone with how they felt about doing these things. And I thought it was really interesting that, so obviously we've got MPA students, so they are comfortable going to the GAO manuals and things like that. They're comfortable with a near peer, but I was really surprised to see a number of them would rather make a pie in the sky reach to Bezos or somebody than they would to ask somebody to be a mentor or to shadow them. And particularly it came with that as the layers of authority. If someone had a much higher rank or authority position, it was harder for them, which actually surprised me, given the responses in class. And so I was, I learned a lot from doing that exercise with the students, and I think the students learned a lot from that as well. So certainly something that I think is important, not only to teach folks going into public administration or public work in any manner, but also to teach those mid-level managers that are bringing those younger folks in to set an environment so they feel comfortable doing those things. They don't feel like they have to stay in these silos. So I like to see it from both those.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now we have a question from Hawks Cats. And before we talk about that, I will say, so this reminds me a little bit of what Josh has said, which is that it's great to know these things. Actually doing them in an environment where there are reasons you might not want to, and we're not necessarily just talking about, it's great to talk about psychological safety and examine that and pick that all out. But the thing is, at the end of the day, if you're in an environment or with a boss that feels psychologically unsafe, what are you going to do? Sit there for 10 years and molt? You got to figure out how to move. And I don't necessarily mean change jobs, because there are other options. This is one of the reasons we're going to do some practice sessions, and we'll probably call them masterminds, just to see everybody's at a different level of their ability to do things, their comfort zone around different tasks, as Christy said. So we're going to see who wants to show up and sort of talk about that and maybe practice some things in between sessions, maybe do 3 sessions, just keep it very short and light. And of course, it'll be free. So just FYI. Okay, now we're going to go to Hawks Cats. And I love that name. So here's a question. From the nonprofit sector seeking connection within the public sector, is there a stigma that boundary spanning is interpreted as a fundraising strategy rather than genuine curiosity? Okay, I'm going to tell you my take on that very quickly, and then I'm going to open it to the panelists. There's always a stigma about everything. There's always a reason not to do boundary spanning. So what's going to make you successful is your sincerity, your ability to look somebody in the eye, whether in the room or over Zoom, and say, you know, I really want to connect with you. I'm retired from federal government. I get more connection requests now by various means than I did while I was still working. They come from different sectors. The thing that's compelling is whether you're serious about it, whether you mean it, whether you're really trying to do something. If you lead with things that look like fundraising, then our connection may be short-lived. It depends on what you say second. So that's my answer, but okay, open it up to Christy, Josh, and Connie.
I'll jump in here on this one. So really kind of to give you an example, when I first started out with Eyes Up Appalachia about 1.5 years ago, one of the things that I had done for over the past decade was work with different individuals throughout the state. And so I had a good solid group of state ties. So some of those were the Attorney General's office, their human trafficking initiative, the governor's human trafficking task force, and a number of others. And so when I went into the Appalachian area, which was a need that was not being filled at the time, I reached back to them to help share their resources in those areas. So there was no mention of money or anything like that. It was simply, I was connecting them to some of those coalitions that I talked about, the opioid coalitions and otherwise. And when they started to need somebody to talk about the human trafficking piece, I'd bring in one of the folks from the Attorney General's office, or if we needed somebody to train the courts in those areas, I'd bring in somebody there, or somebody from the police department task force to talk to the law enforcement. And so when we're working with like CPS, the Children Protective Service offices, we have some other nonprofits that work very closely with juveniles and counseling. I put those guys together. And so as we pull these different agencies together and the different groups that handle maybe different populations, but they overlap a lot. And so we just need to understand who's doing what out there and who has the resources that can help. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I don't ask for money from state or government organizations for my organization, but when they have grants available, I make sure the folks in the area that I cover know that those grants are available, the people that are doing direct services. And so I put them together. And that is, number one, it helps everybody. But number two, the area that I cover has not been represented well for a lot of the funding in the past. And so those state agencies that fund are actually really happy to have somebody from those areas. And it's not me, I'm not the one asking for money, but I know who needs money. I know what the grants say. I know who does the services. And so I put those two things together when it comes to money. But the large majority of the time, I'm not talking money. I'm talking support. I'm talking training. I'm talking advocacy. I'm talking, coordinating and resources, opportunities to work together, putting people together. So that's kind of where I pull all those pieces in.
That's genius. Connie, what's the one thing you think of that you'd like people to take away from this?
So the one thing I would like for them to take away is definitely don't be afraid to reach out to, whether that's to a person or whether that's to an organization to seek information or even to request an information interview. So what I found out, if nothing else, It's going to help you build a list of those contacts, people that you can call, whether you have questions, or organizations that you have an interest in. You'll get to meet some cool people.
Awesome. And you're the poster child for that this year.
I've met a lot of people. I've got a long list.
That's right. And Josh, in terms of the mission focus aspect, especially, what's a big takeaway for people?
So I kind of have two. One of them is, and it's kind of already been discussed. I think a lot of what prevents us from reaching out to others is just a fear of failure or a fear of rejection. But not stopping that, or not stopping us from being able to just say, hey, I see you do great work in this industry. I think we could make an impact. Can we even just chat offline and see where this can bring us? I think, and this also goes back to your point, Kitty, about the genuinity of what's happening here. And I think the really key aspect is being your authentic self. Oftentimes we have a professional side and a personal side, but allowing them to really intermingle, I think, allows us to really understand the essence of boundary spanning, which is connection among each other and how that relates to getting things done. So being able to be your authentic self. And I think, Kitty, one thing that you'll appreciate is that I will also say you have to know and when to seize your moment. And I think a perfect example of that is when I met with the vice president of a community college. It was for an informational interview, which turned out to be an impromptu job interview. And I was offered the job within a 20-minute conversation. And I left the office, curiosity's sake. I had no idea what was going on. I thought it was just a meet and greet, coffee, get to know each other. And I left with one of my first jobs in the career. And so being able to open to opportunity, but also knowing when to seize your moment when it does come up. And that
role play, that was role played, and that is on the website, the landing page, which we'll show you in a few minutes. Okay, thanks, Josh. So now I have a question for the attendees in this session, and that is there anything, I guess I'm wondering, are there other reasons besides the one that Josh highlighted a minute ago about just feeling awkward or feeling like you're going to be rejected? And that's a big one. Although when you start doing stuff, you find out that most people it's just like writers. You don't get a ton of rejections. You mainly get acceptances and conversations start. But are there other fears or other barriers to your crossing silos? Okay, Danita says inclusion is an issue. Danita, how about unmuting yourself and expanding on that?
Okay, good afternoon, and I appreciate the conversation. All of this has been great. And I ended up in this session by mistake, and it was the biggest mistake. It's the best mistake I've made all day. But what I wanted to say, inclusion is a big thing. A lot of times you reach out to people, and if they don't look like you, or if they don't sound like you, or if they're not the age that you want them to be, or anything of that nature, a lot of times people are dismissive, and they may not even know that they're being dismissive. But you can tell either if you're part of a group, or you can tell by how quickly they shut you down, and things of that nature. So.
Okay, so are you able to provide a concrete example today? I know off the top of your head, it's a little last minute, of a time when you were really trying to reach across your organization and you were rebuffed by someone?
not necessarily in my organization as much.
Mhm.
Not necessarily within my organization. So this is
So another organization then.
Yes,
Okay.
more outside of the organization, or if there were, if it were a new group or something of that nature.
Mhm.
For
Okay.
example, I've been in various programs, and you reach out to people sometimes, and this isn't always the case. We're talking about when it happens.
Mhm.
And, you know, they basically turn their back on you. And I'm not going to say physically, but it's just this window, you know, or whatever, this door gets shut.
Mhm.
And there's no way to cross those boundaries. But when I talk about inclusion, it's because it's not consistent, you know, in
Okay.
terms of how they respond to people.
Okay, and okay, I just got a 5-minute warning from Stephen. So Danita, I'm going to be in touch with all of you. This is such a small group by Slack, if you're on Slack, because we would really love to have you practice with us next year, and we don't have a lot of details on that yet, but it would give us a chance to continue this conversation, because that is really disheartening when that happens. And it's a morale killer. And so I think there are some ways, and we've got other people in the network who aren't on here who've been very successful at that across cultures, and we can pull people in if we need to.
And I just want to say I would definitely be interested, because I came from the federal government, and I'm trying to get into nonprofit, and it's different.
Yeah, you got to hang around with us. Okay, cool. So now we've got 5 minutes, which is a little less than I thought we had. So I'm going to share. I'm going to share the slides again. Go to the last slide and show you our contact information. And also how to find the ebook and all of these video role plays and interviews, including the one that Josh just mentioned about the thing that turned into a job interview, which is pretty hilarious. So basically, I've got a short link for you there. And then if you look up at the top, it's a little hard to see, seniorfellowsandfriends.org. If you get there, this ebook project is under the special projects on the menu. And just a warning, I am going to have to rewrite chapter 1 because I was not feeling well for the last couple of weeks, and I'm looking at it now, and it's like it's okay, but it's missing some things. There are a few edits that need to be done, but you will see the chapter that Josh mentioned, the role plays, the interviews, and then you've got our confirmation or our contact information here. And then I will also ping you each on Slack, so that if you're signed up for Slack, you'll get a message there too. And so I'm going to stop that share just so we can wave goodbye at you and thank everyone on both on the panel and in the room for showing up. We really appreciate it. It was nice to meet you, and we hope to talk further with each of you.
Thank you so much for a great session. I apologize. This was a scheduling error on our part.
That's okay.
Mostly because we have colliding Zooms, and I have to be able to let the next Zoom start and get the chair in.
Okay, so everybody wave and smile, and I'll take a screenshot here. And that's for my archives. Thank you very much for coming. And Stephen, we'll talk to you later, okay?
Yep, absolutely.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Awesome.
Bye, everybody.
Everyone, thank you.